Hello, I'm Karen Blake and I'm live here at the SAA headquarters filming for you today, and I'm going to show you how to paint acrylics. Acrylics normally are used on possibly a canvas or a paper, a canvas paper that is. So what I'm going to do today is I'm painting on watercolour paper, a pure cotton, 425 grams, Saunders Waterford knot surface. Which gives a lovely texture. Some of you may not have tried that before, so that's why I'm doing it. Okay, and I'm going to use brush, palette knives to show you the different ways. The first thing we're going to start off with is doing a wet in wet with the background. So first thing I'm going to do is wet the background. Just nice and wet, like you do with watercolour. If you've done watercolour, you'll know that you just wet it all thoroughly, and the colour will only go where I've wet it. So that's going to be in the background areas around here. Okay, so that's nice and wet. How can we tell it's nice? You can see it's got a bit of a shine to it, and we're just doing that. Okay, right. So I want this pale green in the background. This photograph is by my husband. We've just come back from Yellowstone in August, saw some bison, fantastic beasts. And you think they're quite rare to see. They just wander in front of the car. Well, why would you argue with so many ton bison? I mean, you know, they own the place. So that's really good. So what I'm mixing here is white, ultramarine and a bit of raw sienna. And I'm making it a sloppy mixture, a bit like watercolour. You can see there, it's gone a bit yellow, so we'll just add a bit more blue to it and a bit more yellow. Okay. And while that paper is still wet, you can paint it on and you can see that it's running just as it would with watercolour. I've got a bit down there and a bit more here. Okay, and because it's wet and I'm doing watercolour style, I can add some more water to it. I'm not going to worry about those, paint over those in a second. So you can see we get a lovely background. And actually acrylic on watercolour paper is lovely. It really is, gives a nice matte look. It's just the same. The advantages are the same as painting on canvas, but more, because you can do this wet in wet look. So there we go. We've got a nice background. I'm going to put some detail over there, as you can see down here. So that's all right. And you could start anywhere now, but what I'm going to do is paint the horns. And I'm going to use a small brush. And I'm mixing a grey out of the ultramarine blue and white, tiny bit of burnt sienna. Okay, and just a small brush. I'm using it quite thick now. Okay, and I'm just going to paint that in like that. Okay, and because this is acrylic, lo and behold, we can just add a bit more white to it, because we can see that these horns have a little bit of light area on them. So we just lighten that up. And again, because this is acrylic, we can always come back to those. If they're not right, we can paint over them, reposition them, add more colour. But at the moment, I'm happy with those. They will do. Okay. Also mix the dark, so that's ultramarine and burnt sienna, mixed about 50-50, gives you a really nice dark. Monet found this colour mixture and I'm happy with that. If he's used it, that's good with me. Okay, so we're just painting the eye, dark with a little bit of highlight. So we can leave the paper for the highlight, or we could put in a splash of white if we forget. It doesn't matter either way. And then we're going to start on the actual bison. Okay. So he's got a dark head, a lighter fluffy bit, as I call it, furry bit, and a darker bit there. So I'm going to start with the raw sienna, and I'm just going to paint it in. I've got a bit of water in there just to make it spread, but it's the consistency that it's coming out the tube relatively. You need a bit more water when you're working on watercolour paper. It allows it to spread and absorb. That's part of it. So we've got this area coming across here, and it's about time to start adding a bit of burnt sienna. So we'll put in the burnt sienna here, and because it's still wet, you can see that it's blending in nicely with the raw sienna above it. Oh, look at that, isn't that nice? Lovely. Okay, bring it down here a bit, and then I'm going to put some burnt umber into it, and we can see he's got a lot of burnt umber around here. Okay, and again that can mix in. So we're just spreading that round. Okay, dark a bit down here. You can see. Okay, blend that in. And then his face is quite dark. Okay, so we could add a little bit of blue to this just to make it even darker. Blue and brown make a nice combination, and they just make it darker and richer. Sometimes with blue it can look a bit flat without a bit of a different colour in it. Sometimes I'll add a bit of purple, but this time I'm going to add the blue. So we just paint that down there. Okay, so I'm just filling him in roughly. Okay, I've found if I'm going to switch to the palette knife now. So the palette knife gives you some really nice soft feelings, but if you do it straight onto blank paper, you get quite a lot of white coming through, which isn't always appealing. So in a way, it's better to paint underneath it and then go on with your palette knife. I've got here a size 40 palette knife. I've also got a longer one here. They come in different shapes and sizes. This one I'm probably going to use for my grasses at the base here. But this one is really good for putting in the detail and the loose texture. So again, I'm going to start at the top, but this time I'm just going to add a little more white to it. And you can see I don't over mix it on the palette. I want it to be a bit streaky. This is a fantastic photograph. Don't want to upset the husband, so that's, you know, good photograph. But this is a painting, it's not a photograph. I don't want it to be a photograph, though I do love photorealism in painting, but it's not a style that I particularly do. So you want to keep it painterly and light and airy, and you can see how this is showing through underneath. When you do it, you can flick through and get some really nice textures going on there. So I think I might need a bit more brown in there. So we'll just put a bit of burnt umber. And the advantage with a palette knife is you can rub it, start from there, you can smear it in a bit. Okay, so we're going to come down here. Okay, probably gone a bit too dark too soon. That's fine. Again, with acrylic, doesn't really matter. It's such a liberating medium, acrylic. You just don't have to worry at all. You can paint over anything, start again, just let it dry and then paint over it if you're really finding that you're struggling with what you've got. And sometimes actually doing a repaint over the whole thing will look better, because you get these depths coming on. One layer of acrylic sometimes can be a little flat. So we just come down here, and then I am going to put in more of the brown now because he's coming down here. I say he, yeah. I think the females are smaller. And this is from the Laramar Valley in Yellowstone, which, oh, amazing. They call it the Serengeti of the area. And you can see why. It's just, you've got all these bison, you could hear a wolf, You could see a bear in the far distance, but he was far away. I'm just going to add a bit of burnt umber now. Didn't actually get to see wolves, which is a shame, but maybe we'll go back again. Hint to husband, that one. Okay. So let's just burnt umber with a bit of the blue and put that in round his eye. You can see he's got a bit of a shorter fur around his eye there, so we're just going to leave that bit out. Okay. And it won't matter if I go over the edges because he's fluffy. He looks fluffy and he is fluffy, you know, so he's going to come out over those edges. You know, he's not a cardboard cutout. I was so close to the car. You could have touched him. But they say, don't get out the car. Probably a good idea, I'm sure. With the youngsters around, he might have had a little go at you, but and I wouldn't blame him, really. So again, blue and the brown. I'm not really mixing this, as you can see. I'm mixing it on the surface, which again gives you this fresher look. If you over mix it on there, it can be dead up here, so you just don't want to do that. There's a darker area here for that back leg, so we'll just do that. Okay, and I think we're going to add a little bit more there, but a bit of white into that, into the burnt sienna. And this fur is a little smoother, so let's try and get that a little smoother coming down here. Okay, mix it in a bit. We can go both ways. Still wet, that's fine. And we'll just kind of make this go a little over that edge there. It's again not such a definite edge. Okay, and then we've got these breaks in the fur there. So again, with the palette knife, if you put the paint on the edge of the palette knife there, you can then manipulate it up, and you can see that actually you don't get a straight line because it's the steel palette knives are much better than the plastic for this. You get that bend, and I just put it on and I just go round like that, and you can see that you're getting these lovely shapes here, which is really saying that texture. We can also pull the palette knife up like this to get some lovely textures. And if it's dried, which it has up there a bit, we can put some more here. Let's really get him a bit textured here. This is why acrylics is so versatile, because you can use it as a watercolour. You can use it with the palette knife, getting some lovely textures. You can paint it thick. You know, there's so many things you can get. Texture pastes, which I thought about putting on, but I thought I won't complicate it. But we could have added texture paste down here and really built it up. But let's not make it too complicated for today. But they're dead easy to use. They do take longer to dry. You need to allow about 24 hours for a texture paste to dry. But so you do it and then put your work to one side and then come back to it. So at the moment I'm kind of happy with him. I think we'll just put a bit more there. Okay, and I'm going to move on to the grasses now. Okay, so I'll just assess him, see what I feel. Oops, gone over the horn there. We'll just take that off with a bit of tissue. Okay, just bit dried a bit, so we'll just wet the tissue, and then you can just usually just tweak it off there. And actually that's given quite a nice shading to the horn, so I'm quite happy about that. The grasses, yeah, I wanted to add a bit of colour into these grasses. So if you can see this, there's the white and grey, and so I incorporate all the colours that are there because it stitches the picture together. If you just use these colours in one area, it doesn't stitch together. So I'm going to use all the colours I've used before, plus a little bit of purple. Purple is one of my favourite colours. But not only that, it's a dark colour, it's a warm colour, excuse me, and if you use it not too boldly, not too purple, it adds that lovely bit of warmth and a softness to it that you would like in what is a relatively cold, hard picture. Okay, so let's just pick up, I've got this long, thin palette knife, you can see that, and I'm putting the paint on, and I'm just going to smear. Now I'm going to go over the bison because I want him to become part, he's behind the grass, to become part of the grass, to be behind the grass, to be eating the grass. Also it hides this edge, he looks a bit definite there. We can just get rid of some of these, and sometimes I'm putting it on with the flat of the blade, and sometimes I'm putting it on with the edge of the blade. So that's a bit of white across the bottom. Okay, then I'm going to put on a bit of raw sienna. Again, I'm not mixing it, I'll just put it on. It will mix as I do it. You can see that it will just blend in. There's no need to dull it any. You can just enjoy this then. You don't have to think, oh, is this the right colour? You know, it's just a version of this, and this is how I see this bison whenever I look at the picture. I love the rugged, chunky look of these bison. So there's the yellow, and then we can go back to the green that we mixed earlier for the background, ultramarine white with a little bit of the raw sienna. We're going to put in there as well. And you can see instantly this green here comes forward. It mixes in, it's starting to look part and parcel of the landscape, which is what we want, you know, we want that. So I'm just enjoying doing that. Now I think I might put in that purple. Okay, so I'm putting it in strong at the moment. Just put that in there. Okay, and you can see straight away what a difference it makes. It just warms your picture up. Talking of perspective here, warmth comes forward, texture comes forward, detail comes forward. So this isn't detailed, but it is textural and bigger than what's behind it. So it will look in front. And also if you overlap, so these grasses are going over the bison, so that pushes him behind. Visually, that's the eyesight is amazing when it works that out. Okay, so here we go, and I'm going to put the burnt umber in as well. I'm using quite a limited palette, but I'm using them all across, as we've said, stitching it together. Okay, and I think I'm going to go to my chunkier one just to see if we can get some chunkier grasses. Sometimes I dip it in the water like a paintbrush, because it is a bit like a paintbrush, and that just helps the paint come off the palette knife a little bit. Okay, and I'm going to try and fill in this area down here because I've got this big white line down here which I don't want. Obviously it wasn't there in real life, so let's get rid of it. And by doing that I'm blurring out the base of the grasses because I want you to look here where those creases are, where the sharp edges are. I don't want you to really look down here. This is decoration, it makes sense, but I don't want you looking there when the picture is finished particularly. You know, so directing the eye here, and we can even, talking of that, we could direct these grasses a little bit to make you look that way. You don't want to make it too obvious, like arrows, look here. But you do want to kind of direct the vision there. So I've just got some burnt sienna. Let's just put some of that in. Okay. And you can see that the different palette knife is giving a different stroke. This fine one is giving fine, thin grasses. This one's giving more chunky. and blending it a little bit more. And we'll put some dark in at the base because that's going to be darker at the base of the picture. That'll hold the eye in as well. A bit of dark holds you there. Okay, so we'll just, you could say, why didn't I pre-paint down here? It's a good point. In a way, I quite like some of the white showing through because there's white in these grasses. So that's fine with me. I don't have a problem with that. There's not so much white in the bison, and I wanted to create that furry look. But you see how we've got these lovely broken aspects here, which is, you don't want to lose that. That's part of the character, part of the texture of this painting. If you do want to send in questions, let me know. Just send them on and I will answer whatever questions you have. I do teach drawing, watercolour and acrylics, so it doesn't have to be just about acrylics, but that probably makes sense when I'm demonstrating the acrylics. Okay. So we could go back to the bison, and you can see here is a little bit flat, maybe needs a bit more texture. So let's add a bit more texture to that. Let's mix the burnt umber with a little bit of white. So I do mix sometimes. Sometimes you have to. You can't do anything about it. You haven't got the right colour. But what you don't want to do is just keep grabbing different tubes of colour. Oh, well, this is a perfect fur colour, I'll add that and this. It doesn't stitch your picture together. So, you know, using this smaller palette and trying to make your colours out of that will always look better, more as a whole picture. Okay. So so I've got this grey brown going in there. Okay, a bit of burnt sienna going in there. Okay, and whenever you're doing a fur, try and stroke in the direction of the fur. You don't want to be going against the fur line, because that's the way your eye goes. When you paint this, your eye flows up and across and then down the fur line. So if you're doing a dog or a cat, always paint the way the fur goes. Never just put it on randomly. You can if you want a different effect, but in general, you would go the way the fur. So we've got some white here on top of that colour that I'm just using, and we can see that there's a light bit here. I'm just going to add that bit there. And there we are, that's coming in nicely. Okay, so let's just stand back and see where we need to go. Okay, he could do with a bit more fur on the top of his head. Here and here. So standing back, that's a good thing to do. Stand back, have a look, because you're too close. You're not at a viewing distance. You need to stand back and see where you're going wrong. You may also notice, going right, maybe going right, on my area here. I've done a plan. That isn't just for now, that's what I do in general. So I've thought about the colours, I've thought about the process that I was going to do, step by step, because I start at the background and work my way forward. What extra equipment I might need, palette knife, and what palette knives, that kind of thing. And then I've done a tonal sketch here. You can see, is that right?
If you hold it in front of your work.
Oh, okay.
So there, yeah,
sorry.
That's all right. And then there we go.
Okay. So then you can see, here's the darker areas, here's the lighter areas. That's the line of the change of fur that we want to achieve. And more comments, really. If you were writing an essay, you'd do a plan. If you were writing a whole storybook, you'd write a plan. So it's good to do that with drawing. Have your plan, then you can relax and enjoy what you're going to do easier. So I am going to resort back to a brush to get this little bit of fluffy here, because with the palette knife you can't do fine stuff. That's fine, everything has a limit to it, what you can do. So I'm mixing the burnt umber with the ultramarine, and again I'm thinking this fur comes over, so we just paint that like that. And you could say, well, that may be a bit blue, but I quite like that. As long as I put some more blue somewhere else, it will be all right. So there's some fur behind here. Okay, and I'm keeping it in a furry type of way, a stroke type of way, so we're not getting confused what it is. My marks, this word mark making says this mark is fur. So you can see that's going around there, and I can fill in a little bit here. Also, it's quite good to put in between the gaps. So you may have heard of negative painting. Negative painting is where you paint the gap, but you're actually showing the positive space. So here's the positive space, and by putting in the dark, you can see that this is starting to stand out. Okay, there we go. Oh, he's coming up quite nicely, isn't he now? And I've picked up a bit of white as I've gone round. Actually, that's working lovely. I'm quite happy with that. We'll just go back in and fill that in with this slightly lighter colour, and that's coming across there. So just need to go up there a bit. Okay, and that can go a little bit darker there. And just darken that, and that will show up some of the grasses. And the leg is a little bit darker as well. So now you can get the feeling of that shadow, this darker fur coming behind the grasses. Okay. So have we got any questions?
No, just lots of nice comments.
Oh, thanks. That's nice. Oh, okay.
I didn't want to stoke your ego too much.
Oh, no. No. That's fine. I can take nice comments. Okay, so, yeah, I'm just putting in some more strokes there, and maybe they're coming out a bit harsh. So let's resort back to my palette knife. Part of the reason I wear an apron is so I can wipe everything nice and easy. Saves the clothes getting messy. Acrylic doesn't come off clothes. I know that to my cost. Once dried, it's usually pretty permanent. Okay. So let's just have another look at him. Okay, I think we might put a little more blue down here. Blue is quite a useful colour because it's a cold colour, so it can send things away as well. So I'm hoping to send this bit back a little bit, not have it too prominent. And I'll just go over there as well and push that back a little bit. Okay. The advantage with this paper is it has got a certain amount of texture. So as we said, it was a knot paper. So you can actually rub your palette knife over like that, and it will pick up that texture. You can see that there. So make use of your papers or your textures. If you've got texture paste on there and it's dried, you can paint over it. You know, there's no point having a texture if you're not going to access it. Okay, so where else do I need to go? Gary? Well,
It's looking good. I mean, add more if you need to, or just say cheerio to the lovely people watching if we're done.
yeah, I think we're done. What was that, half an hour?
Yeah, half an hour.
Half an hour. Hey, how painting a bison in half an hour. Okay. So yes, get out your palette knives, get out your acrylics. The SAA range is really good. Actually, I'm not just saying that, it is a good range. Some of the paints are a little thinner. This is quite nice for this type of project. And using wet and wet, thick palette knife, go for it and enjoy. Okay, thank you. Bye.